So Adam Weber had a great question for the podcast today. And if you ever have a question, feel free to go in the show notes below, guys, and drop your question. That's why I'm here. That's what I'm trying to do, is help you guys each and every day. I actually got a really kind comment from one of you guys in my DMs recently saying this is the most underrated podcast in the history of podcasts, which is hilarious. But also very accurate, because my podcast team has said that this podcast has actually grown quicker than they've ever seen any podcast that they've done. They've done over 300 types of podcasts, and this is the quickest growing podcast they have seen, which is really, really good to hear. And I want to deep down have a thank you from me to you, that you come to this every single week, you listen to this every single Tuesday, and you make and take action based on what we talk about. So Adam's question, Adam Weber asked specifically today, is there a circumstance where you would recommend a spouse electing medical insurance through their employer in order to gain access to an HSA despite already being covered by a better health insurance plan? So this is a great question. Basically, what they're saying is that they have the option right now to have a high deductible health plan in order to get the HSA. The only requirement you need to get an HSA or get access to an HSA is a high deductible health plan. Now, typically, if you're W-2 and you have access, or you have a plan that's a high deductible health plan, your employer will give you access to an HSA. So they'll partner with a bank, let's call it Bank of America, Health Equity, something like that. And they'll say, hey, you've opted into this plan, therefore you have this benefit. And we're going to link this to your paycheck. So if you want to choose to invest some money in this, that's great. Or save some money in this health savings account, that's great. What they're going to do is have that money transferred from your paycheck directly to your HSA. Now, within your HSA, you have to go invest that money. We'll get into the details of the HSA here shortly. But if you opt to put money in your HSA from your paycheck, it's just going in your HSA as a savings account, hence the name, health savings account. So that's an important concept to understand. The other thing to think about when you're actually putting money in is if you're not a W-2 employee and you're like myself, an entrepreneur. So you don't have a paycheck from an employer. You don't have a pre-existing relationship with a bank like Bank of America or Health Equity. So you have to actually go get both of these things. You have to go source a high deductible health plan. If you guys ever are entrepreneurs out there looking to get help with health plans, I have somebody that can connect you and get you a great plan for your situation. And then the other thing is that HSA is not linked directly to that health plan. I have to go out into the open market and go find an HSA. I will tell you right now, I'll save you all of the hassle. I use Fidelity, and Fidelity's HSA is widely respected as one of the best HSAs on the market. And so I would just go open a Fidelity and keep it super simple. That's not advice. It's just a really good, option that you have. So when I move my money into my HSA, I still have to go into the HSA specifically and update my investment choices. That is something a lot of people don't understand. They're like, I think I have an HSA, or maybe I have an FSA. If you have an FSA, that is not the same as an HSA. We are having two different conversations today. So let's get back to the question now that we understand the benefits of a little bit of that, of why you would do and select that. Now we'll get into the really, really granular benefits of the HSA in a second as to why you should consider this. But let's look at the actual question itself. Should I essentially change my regular health plan, that's a pretty good or better health plan supposedly, to a high deductible health plan so that I have access to the HSA, so that I can use the benefits we're going to talk about here shortly? So the question, it really comes down to math, and some of these variables, specifically your health status, are going to be in question. And it's kind of like future taxes as one of the variables to your Roth IRA or traditional IRA. You're not going to know what taxes are in 30, 40 years. You're just not. So you're going to assume today's health or today's taxes are what continues, unless you have other information to play. I mean, obviously, just understand your situation here. Are you going to be going to the doctor a lot? Are you planning on having a kid? Are you planning on having surgeries? All that kind of stuff. Are you going to be going to the doctor? Essentially, in a nutshell. Now, obviously, you could have freak accidents, emergencies where you weren't planning on it. So let's think about this. If we go and use our current plan, we'd likely have a higher premium that we're paying per paycheck, but when we go to the doctor, it's pretty much all covered, or it's really, really healthily covered based on the question that was presented to me. I don't know Adam Weber's specific health plan, but my guess is based on the question, they go to the doctor here and there, and pretty much they're always covered by insurance. Now, with a high deductible health plan, it's a little different typically. So when you go to the doctor, you actually pay more out of pocket. You have a higher deductible. So let's understand what the deductible is, what a premium is, what out of pocket is, all these like fancy terms in the insurance department that nobody really explains to you in school. So the first thing is premium. That's what you're paying for the plan, to own the plan, the cost of the plan, nothing else, just the cost. Typically, as a W-2 employee, that's a premium that comes out of your paycheck. So you'll look at your pay stub and you'll see, hey, I got paid $10,000 this month. And, let's call it $400 came out of my paycheck, 200 each paycheck out of the 2 paychecks I got that month, and they went to pay my premium for my health insurance plan. That's all a premium is, the cost of the plan. So you can easily weigh the cost of this plan versus, or the better plan we talked about, versus the high deductible health plan. The high deductible health plan is going to be cheaper 9 times out of 10. So this high deductible health plan, when you go to the doctor, is typically a little more expensive, but your premium, what you pay for the plan, is almost always cheaper. I've had high deductible health plans. I've also had other plans, and every single time my HDHP is always cheaper, always cheaper. And so I pay less. However, here's the catch. What if I go to the doctor? What if I go to the doctor for my daughter's situation, as you guys know, is pretty severe? I'm on the hook, and it's not fun. So your higher deductible is something that you're going to have to meet before insurance really kicks in at a heavy rate, right? Sometimes they cover some services, obviously, based on the plan itself, but literally you have a higher deductible, hence the word high deductible health plan. So measure that. Let's see what those actual numbers are, so that if you actually do go to the doctor, that you're expecting to probably hit that higher deductible. Now, the amount you go to the doctor, what you go to the doctor for, the cost of those services from the medical world are going to be very dependent on your situation. If you go once a year for a checkup, like my wife and I do, or my other daughter, like, it's not going to be expensive. I would probably go HDHP without question, because it would just make a whole lot of sense. But if I'm always in the hospital, if I have all these issues, if I go to the ER like my daughter has unfortunately too many times, or we have, overnight stays for multiple days, or we have EEGs, or, we have blood tests, I could go on and on. You might want to consider elsewhere, because the benefit of the HDHP is because you have access to the HSA. That is like the number one benefit. However, I also pay a lot more out of pocket. Now, in our situation, I will be honest that even if I selected a different plan, I would likely not be covered by a lot of stuff typically. That's just the reality of a rare syndrome. It's not how I like it to be, but it's just the reality. So either situation for us, we're going to be paying a ton of money, just quite honestly. Now, in your situation, Adam, you should consider your health status, which is a variable. Obviously, today you might be healthy, tomorrow you might have, open heart surgery. It's just an unfortunate potential that could happen. So you can't really predict the future of your health, but generally speaking, are you a pretty healthy individual? Do you go to the doctor a lot? Do you not? Do you have children that are going to the doctor a lot? Do you not? And so typically, young professionals that are really, really healthy, that don't have children, that aren't planning on kids anytime soon, the high deductible health plan with access to the HSA is a no-brainer. But if you have a family that goes to the doctor every week, you might want to consider elsewhere. But again, just because you have a lot of sickness or a lot of issues with medical does not mean you don't opt for the high deductible health plan. You just got to know the cost and the benefits of this, the pros and cons. So if my deductible is higher, but my premium is lower on my high deductible health plan, that could or could not be more beneficial for me in my situation. You just have to assess your situation. The other thing and component you want to look at is the out-of-pocket max. And so I think it's funny that they call it the out-of-pocket max. I don't know. I laugh. I throw shade at the medical industry because of our situation with my daughter. And I just know very little is covered by our plans. And we looked for the best plan with one of the best insurance reps in the nation. And there's still it's just the reality of a rare syndrome. Can't explain it. You can't plan for it, all that kind of stuff. And so the out-of-pocket max is obviously up to the deductible. You are pretty much on the hook for that cost. Now, between the deductible and the out-of-pocket max, typically insurance will cover a percentage of that, and it depends on what the services are, what your plan states, all that. It's very clear-cut in your health insurance document. So you just need to go through that and read it and understand it and ask questions. And you can always come to my DMs. I'm not like some health insurance expert here. That's not what I do for a living, but I could easily sort through and make sense of it. So when you're assessing both of these, the HSA is obviously the pride and joy. I love the HSA. It's a big benefit. Let's say you decide the high deductible health plan makes more sense. based on the numbers. Now you have access to the HSA. Now let's talk about the benefits of this HSA because you've selected this option. And let's weigh versus not only just the two plans, but now this additional benefit, which is the HSA access. Now, when I'm a W-2 employee, my company typically has a partnership with some bank. And so if I say I'm going to do a high deductible health plan, they're going to actually give me access to an HSA. It's a bank, typically Bank of America, Health Equity, somewhere like that, right? And so when I was at Deloitte, I had Bank of America. When my wife was at Lumberman's, she had Health Equity. And so neither one of those were chosen by us. You have the option, even if your employer gives you access to that, to switch your HSA provider somewhere else. Hopefully they can swap it in payroll and just have it directly come out of your payroll, and your pay stub shows. Sometimes they make it more complicated. You got to get paid out. You got to then invest or transfer that money over after tax. You got to tell your CPA at year end, all this kind of things. So it just kind of depends. Typically it's pretty simple, straightforward, but sometimes organizations make this complicated. If you're 1099 or you're self-employed, this is a lot easier. You're sending that money to your bank and then you're putting that in your HSA and you're telling your CPA to adjust for that year end. And that's exactly what I do. And I personally use Fidelity. Fidelity, you can go search HSAs all you want, but Fidelity is going to probably be bar none. It's probably going to be any HSA out there. And so I always love the access to Fidelity. And that is something I've done for about a year and a half now. And the HSA is phenomenal there. Now let's talk about what the HSA is. What are the benefits, Adam, when you're thinking through this question about not just health insurance, but what are the related benefits, aka the HSA here? So the HSA is a health savings account. So it's intentionally used to save for your health related needs. But people stop there and do not understand the benefits. This is the best, literally the best tool that's out there. When they built this product, this HSA product, the government was said to be drunk when they created this because it is so incredibly good and there are so many tax benefits with this that people did not believe it. They're like, there's no way this is a real thing. And the HSA is incredibly powerful tool. So the HSA stands for a health savings account. So most people are thinking you're saving money in a health account, and that's the benefit for when I go to the doctor. It's not really the benefit. It is and it's not, right? So before we go into the HSA benefits, I also want to stop everyone and recognize that the FSA, the flex spending account, is not the same. The FSA is not the same. So if you have an FSA or you're confused if you have one or the other, just go check. The FSA, use it or lose it, not a big fan. It is what it is. It provides its benefits, but I'm not a huge fan of the FSA. This is the HSA. So when we open this HSA at Fidelity and I have my paycheck going directly into, let's call it my Fidelity HSA, the first thing that you get from a benefit perspective is the money that transfers into that Fidelity account or the HSA is pre-tax money, meaning I don't pay tax on that money. So if I get paid $10,000 for my paycheck and it goes straight to my HSA, let's call it $400 a month. That $400 has reduced my taxable income, meaning my $10,000 that was once taxable now comes down to $9,600 net of $400, and I'm only taxed at $9,600. So that pre-tax benefit is already number one. They call it the triple tax savings. So the first benefit is the pre-tax adjustment here. That is similar to a 401k, traditional 401k, like a pre-tax 401k or a traditional IRA. So the money you invest in that account is literally reducing your taxable income. You get the tax benefit now. However, on the back end, that's when you're paying out typically for like the IRA and stuff like that. When you withdraw, it's considered income tax. Okay. So your HSA money in is tax-free. Beautiful start, right? Now you could stop there. You can use that for any medical expenses coming up. You go to the doctor, a $90 well visit. You can use that HSA to pay for that. The next piece of the puzzle is specifically the second benefit, which is the second part of the triple tax savings, which is your money grows interest tax free. So if I grow my money, if I decide to invest the dollars I put into that Fidelity HSA, it's not just a savings account, it's an investment account. I can invest that money, and all of my money that grows is tax free. So that's similar to an IRA, right? Or a 401k. All of my money, whether on the way in I get the benefit or on the way out I get the benefit, during this period I'm investing, All of this is tax-free. That is unbeatable. So when the TikTok children of the world, the immaturity of the world, come to you and say, well, you shouldn't use an HSA or a 401k because that's what old people use. They just don't understand the benefits. Like, they're just telling you something. There is nothing that beats a tax-free growth vehicle. IRA, HSA, 401ks, right? There's nothing that beats it from that perspective. You can't get anywhere else in this world where you're finding a tax-free growth vehicle. That second benefit is a beautiful benefit. Obviously, you're investing that money. You're not probably going to be using that money. And then the third benefit is if I obviously want to take that money out for medical related reasons, I can then take it out tax-free. So yes, you just heard that right. If I invest or save, whatever you want to do with the money you put in there, if I put that money in there, I use it for health related reasons, I literally never pay tax on that money. There's nothing in this world you can do that with. You literally do not have to pay tax. And so that money flows through your paycheck, not taxed, into the HSA, not taxed, into a medical billing, not taxed. That is part of the benefit. Again, this gets better. So that's the triple tax savings, okay? And for anybody wondering how much can you invest per year, the 2025 contribution for a single individual is $4,300, I believe. Let me double check that. Literally, it's usually, I think it's $4,385.50. So married, filing jointly, HSA. Or I apologize. Why did I do married filing jointly? Contribution limit. That would be probably better. 2025. I think it's 8550, 4300. Yes, I am correct. So in 2025, and this will change obviously every single year, the HSA family plan is 8550 per year. So you're able to contribute up to that amount. And then obviously as a single individual, 4300, which was accurate. Now, if you're over 55, you can have a catch-up contribution of $1,000 into the HSA in 2025. Again, all those numbers will change, every once in a while, every year, potentially, just depending on inflation. It kind of like paces with inflation. And so those numbers are very large. Now, if your company, this is very common, and this isn't the same for like a 401k, but if your company contributes to an HSA, like on your behalf, they put 500 or $1,000 towards your HSA, that counts towards that limit. That was surprising to me when I first learned that. So that's a very important concept. Your 401k match doesn't count towards your $23,000 limit. Your HSA contribution from an employer, $500 benefit, $1,000 benefit, pretty common. That goes towards that. So if you have an 8550 limit and your employer puts $1,000 in for you, then you now can only contribute $75.50 per year. So that's a very important piece of the conversation. Now, once you have these three benefits, the other piece of the puzzle where I really use it to my benefit is to invest the money, but not use it for medical related reasons. And so why do I actually go about doing this? So when I invest that money, number one is I don't have to, with Fidelity, which is another good reason I use them, I don't have to hold any cash on hand in the HSA at any given point in time. Now, I can tell you a lot of HSAs have a cash minimum maintenance requirement, right? So like Health Equity was $2,000. You have to have $2,000 in cash before you can invest anything over and above that. And same with Bank of America, it was $1,000. So what I did is I set up automations. So when my money went in, anything above $1,000 or anything above $2,000, when I used to have those HSAs, my wife and I, would be automatically invested. And you can set up your automatic investments within your account. Now with Fidelity and many other ones, you do not have a limit of cash. So all of your money going in can be invested. However, if you want to use this for health related reasons, you do not want to invest all your money because you need cash to do that, right? To spend money on medical. Now, the benefit of this specifically outside of the triple tax savings, which is obviously a phenomenal benefit, and another vehicle to save for health related reasons, are the other things when you pay out of pocket. So I'll give you an example. My daughter goes to the ER. In fact, the ambulance was here, the EMS was here like last week. So last week the ambulance came and we ended up not transporting to the hospital, but there was a cost to all that stuff. And that cost, let's just say, for example, $500. So that $500 was billed to me. Let's say that's what I was on the hook for. That $500, if I take my regular credit card or bank account, whatever, and I pay that money off, I save that receipt. I can then withdraw that money in the future for any reason, any particular reason, tax-free. Yes, you just heard me right. So if I pay, let's say the $500, but I let the other $500 qualified distribution into that account because there's a limitation on how much you can contribute, and I let that other $500 build and compound and have tax-free growth, that money then grows in the future and I'm able to withdraw tax-free. That is an amazing benefit. I don't need to tell you why that's an amazing benefit. So now I can set myself up, and we have, let's call it $40,000, $50,000 of out-of-pocket expenses over the last couple of years. So what we are doing, we're paying those out of pocket, literally saving the receipts into simple, some programs or HSAs have specifically a upload portal. I just have a HSA receipts folder, literally. And I also have an HSA Excel document. So every time I have an out-of-pocket expense, I go to the date. I add the date in Excel formula. I add the date or add the name of the person that is responsible for the medical expense, how much that is, and then also have I saved the receipt, which then I can cross-reference to my email folder if the IRS ever comes after me. Technically speaking, guys, the HSA is a debit card, so I could go into like Chipotle if I really wanted, swipe it. It would work. It would work. I've made that mistake actually in the past, not at Chipotle, like Walgreens or something like that. And I pulled out the wrong card, used it, it went through, and I was like, oh crap. Unless you get audited, no one's gonna check it. I wouldn't like recommend that, like intentional use of, that's illegal. But my point is, like, if you swipe that card, it's gonna work if you have money in it. So you got to be careful about that. And then you obviously get that benefit long term. Now, the other benefit to this, which I haven't even brought up yet, is let's say you get to like 65. The average person after 65 is spending over $300,000 in medical during their existing life. So that is not great to have an average of that high, but I want to make sure my HSA is filled up for that time so I don't have a kid that's handling all my medical expenses. I burden my own child. Do not want that happening. However, let's say at 65, I'm perfectly healthy, I'm living life. The HSA now becomes a hybrid account to an IRA. So essentially what's happening, I can withdraw that money, any money that I've had receipts for, all that kind of stuff, again, at any point in time in the future, from 25 to 65, whatever I want, I can withdraw that money tax-free for whatever. Like I could go to the casino if I wanted to. But let's say I wait till 65 years old and I'm perfectly healthy and I pulled all my, cash receipts out. Anything over and above that is just considered income tax. So it's treated like a traditional IRA in a sense, right? My income from that I'm withdrawing, obviously it was not taxed on the way in. It grew tax-free. And then when I withdrew it, it obviously wasn't used for medical expenses. So then it's just considered income tax. And so that is a tremendous alternative to maybe you don't have a 401k at work, so I'm using this as like a pseudo retirement account or a hybrid account, or giving me a lot of flexibility outside of the IRA, 401k, taxable brokerage. This HSA is a very, very powerful tool. In fact, if I'm looking at a very standard situation, I typically look at like an employer sponsored option for investing, which is like a 401k, typically 403b, TSP, potentially 457, right? I'm also looking at an IRA, Roth or traditional IRA, but then I'm also looking at brokerage. And then the fourth vehicle is an HSA. If your situation, Adam, specifically calls for an HSA or allows for an HSA, I would highly recommend to add that as part of your portfolio. It is a tremendous tool. Again, you're with Fidelity, so you have all the great options, low fees, and you're able to grow that. And obviously as a family, $8,550 per year, and as a single individual, still $4,300 you're able to contribute to it, and your employer might match you as a benefit or give you some money into that as a benefit. So all of these benefits are incredible. So when we go back to the question, is there a circumstance where you'd recommend a spouse electing medical insurance through their employer in order to gain access to an HSA despite already being covered by a better health insurance plan? Again, assess the actual cost of the two plans with a realistic expectation of what is your health status and how often are you going, like what is that plan actually going to turn into cost wise. And then also realize, even if the HSA is a little more expensive based on your health needs, or the high deductible health plan is, you still have that extra benefit of the HSA, and that extra benefit could outweigh the better plan. And so never rule out the HSA. The HSA is a phenomenal tool. I talk about it all the time. In my order of operations from an investment standpoint, I typically put it after retirement accounts, but I know a lot of people, and I'm okay with it as well, I'm very flexible, that this could be serving as the number one vehicle after the 401k match. So like number two in our framework. So 401k match, then maxing out the HSA number 2, I could very much so make a case that would make a lot of sense. I have it after the IRA, after making your 15% contribution to retirement typically. So I have on the back end, like step number 5. But if you moved it to step number 2, I would have no problem with that. And I would see validity behind that decision. And so when you're looking at this question, Adam, is there a specific circumstance? It's more so a bigger overarching situational aspect of comparing the cost, adding the extra benefit of the HSA in with this over here. If you're healthy, you're likely going to spend less over here with HSA and also or with a high deductible health plan, and then also get the added benefit of the HSA, which is really a no-brainer. The only other thing is to consider your medical needs. And so this is such a great topic to cover, guys, and I hope you guys took this and are going to use it. Go assess when it's open enrollment season, October or whatever the case is. Go check your health plans at your work, because this is such a great tool that can generate crazy wealth for you and your family. And who knows if they close this down, because it's essentially a loophole. And like I said, Congress was called drunk when they created this because it's so good. And so if you can get your hands on this, please do. Not to force everybody into an HSA, but it's definitely a consideration point that I want everybody to have when it comes to investments. And I hope this helps you guys and takes you guys to the next level. And I will see you next week.
You've been listening to Money on My Mind with your host, Brendan Schlagbaum. If you found value in today's discussion, share it with someone who could benefit from it too. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already, so you never miss a money mastery tip. Until next time, stay passionate about your financial journey and keep taking bold steps towards your money goals.